China has many different physical features, including the Taklamakan Desert, the Gobi Desert, the Tian Shan Mountains, the Yellow River, the Yangtze River, and the Zai River. The majority of western China is very mountainous and highly elevated, while the majority of eastern China has a lower elevation.
The climate in China is very diverse depending on the physical features. In the mountainous areas of China, highland climate is common, while cooler, more tropical climates are in the east. With highland climate, the higher the elevation, the cooler the temperatures, and the lower elevation, the warmer the temperatures.
Vegetation in China highly resembles the climate. It is also very diverse depending on the physical features. In western China, the vegetation is either desert or highland vegetation because of the mountains. With highland vegetation, the higher the elevation, the less the vegetation. The lower the elevation, the more vegetation. In eastern China, various forests are the more common vegetation. Southeast China has more tropical forests, while northeast China has cooler, drier forests. Although China might seem like it is a more developed country, it is actually newly industrialized. Because even though they have a high literacy rate, their GDP per capita and life expectancy rate is too low for them to be considered more developed. Their literacy rate is 95.1%, which is pretty high, but if you take a look at their GDP per capita, it is only $6,188.19, which is really low considering the amount of people in their country. Also, their life expectancy is only 74.99 years, while their HDI is only 0.792. Lastly, when it comes to population density, most people in China live in the east because of the mountains in the west. This is because the mountains make it harder to live on the western half of China. The eastern half has a lower elevation and a flatter physical layout. The climate is much more bearable and temperate, instead of the dry desert and cold highland climates. Another reason they live in the east is trade, and the majority of jobs are in the east because the South China Sea is on the east coast. 1/3 of the world's trade travels through this sea. This makes this area a hotspot for trade. We interrupt this video with a breaking news story.
An elderly lady was recently killed on the Great Wall of China after she was knocked over by a Canadian tourist. The tourist was running and laughing while trying to run in between the woman and her husband. Reports say that the woman immediately lost consciousness after she was knocked into the Great Wall.
She suffered serious head trauma that caused bleeding from her mouth, ears, and nose. The elderly lady died before paramedics could arrive. The elderly lady was 73 and visiting from northern China.
In the beginning of China's history, they were ruled by dynasties. All of these dynasties followed a cycle of being happy and prosperous in the beginning, and then falling apart, and a revolution would start the cycle over. Then, in 1966, the Cultural Revolution introduced communism to China. Led by Mao Zedong, the revolution formed Red Guards and the Chinese youth. They then spread to the workers and military. These Red Guards led rallies, and some of the more radical guards had more violent ways. China has a communist government, but they also have a president. The president is elected for a 5-year term by the NPC and is eligible for re-election. The president is able to nominate a premier, which is approved by the NPC. The president of China is Xi Jinping, and the premier of China is Li Keqiang. China's 4 branches of government include the executive branch, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the military branch. China's government system is very similar to the United States, but they have a military branch of government, while the United States does not. The Chinese enjoy a variety of foods, from spring rolls to chow mein to tofu hua. The Chinese meals are typically made with many vegetables and meats. They eat a lot of rice and noodles. Also, they put different kinds of sauce on almost all of their foods. The Chinese don't use regular American utensils, such as forks and knives. They use chopsticks to eat almost everything. Also, they have different customs from the US, such as they take their shoes off before they enter a house and they look down when they first greet each other.
They celebrate holidays like Chinese New Year's and the Ghost Festival. When they have time to play, many elderly Chinese will go to the park and exercise and sing. Others will play ping pong or badminton. Mahjong is a popular Others will play ping pong or badminton. Mahjong is a popular tile game they play. Mahjong requires 4 people to play, and the winner is the one with the most points after all the tiles are gone. Most Chinese aren't religious, but they do follow philosophy. 2 of the philosophies are Taoism and Shamanism. Taoism teaches people to be humble, while Shamanism has leaders that can diagnose and heal different illnesses.